Hello, please like, share and subscribe because today I'll be breaking down Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 Episode 2 Ad Astra per Aspera. This was our courtroom episode and it may just be one of the best episodes in Star Trek history, but let's get to the episode. We start with a view of the city and it looks great. It's very futuristic but is also something I could see in today's world. We then see a young Una and she is injured and her parents are debating whether to take her to the hospital because if they find out she is Lyra they'll arrest her and her parents. Her mum then comes over to comfort her and this really shows how her mum is the more caring of her parents, and it's a really great example of motherhood and maternal instinct and how any good mother would react to their child being injured. But then you have Una's father, who is the concerning parent who wants Una to be okay but doesn't want to lose her just because their family is Illyrian, and it's a really great example of fatherhood and how the father is wanting to protect his family. And then you have Una who is weighing all this on her shoulders, and it goes to shows that kids can really see what's happening and then they think that everything depends on them, and it really mirrors how in present day Una doesn't want to bring her friends into this situation, and it goes to show how much Una cares about what's going on in the world around her, both the younger and older version of her character. But then we come back to present day and Una is looking out her window and it really shows how much her solitude is affecting her. We then see Captain Beetle, Una and another Starfleet officer, and Starfleet is offering Una a plea deal that she'll get honorable dismissal and will be allowed to live as a Federation citizen, but Una recognizes that Starfleet doesn't want it known that an augment was able to climb the Starfleet ranks, but Beetle doesn't believe that and Una doesn't want to make a decision then and there, and so Beetle recommends that Una and her legal counsel review it, and then Una asks how can he counsel me when he works for you, and Una's basically saying that her legal counsel may try to persuade her to agree to the agreement. Beetle then leaves the room and we then cut to Pike. He is at an Illyrian colony to get a lawyer for Una's case, and once he gets to the front office this lady is just saying that this lawyer is unavailable. Pike tells her that he can wait until he starts running out of oxygen. She tries to convince him to go home but he refuses and she eventually get the lawyer to see him. But I want to talk about the extreme level that Pike is willing to go for Una to get the help she needs. He is willing to even put his career on the line, and while this should be expected since this is the cowboy diplomacy era of Star Trek, it's very much unexpected because it's more so something you would expect from Kirk rather than Pike, though Pike is someone to stick up for his crew and would be a person who would have the motto no man left behind, which is something I think you want to see in every Starfleet captain because they are much more likable and they make up some of the best Starfleet captain throughout Star Trek history. Then the lawyer was able to see Pike and make the room breathable for him, and the lawyer says sarcastically, I knew you were desperate, I just didn't think you were stupid. And this really shows how similar Una and this lawyer are, given they're both very funny characters with an amount of seriousness to them. Pike and the lawyer then sit down and talk. Pike tries to get her to take the case. Initially he's unsuccessfully, but she's eventually agrees. But there is something else I want to talk about, and it's that this lawyer knows classified things about Starfleet and just doesn't seem right to me since she is Illyrian and not a Federation citizen, so it just seems off to me that she'd have classified files. But there is something else we learn in this scene, that Una and this lawyer were childhood friends, and then Pike, the crew of the Enterprise, and this lawyer head to Earth to free Una from her imprisonment. A lawyer who we learn from Una that her name is Nero, and Nero and Una don't start off very well, but they are able to agree to fight Starfleet for Una's freedom, and so Nero with Una's permission goes to tell Beetle that Una's rejected the Proposal. We then go to the Enterprise and Beetle knocks on Pike's door to tell him that Una rejected the proposal, and Pike responds with good, and Anson Mount's acting in this scene was great, and in this episode is another great example of Pike's determination to help save his crew. He's not willing to just let them go, and he won't leave anyone behind, and it's really great to see this. But back to the episode, Beetle comes in Pike's quarters and tells him that now the Judge General Advocate is looking into the case, and we also learn that Beetle Boss is the Judge General Advocate, which is curious given that Beetle is a starship captain. But maybe in the future we'll learn more about what exactly Beetle is meaning in this scene, but for now let's just focus on this episode. So Pike and Beetle part ways for right now, but then we see the Judge Advocate General and she's reviewing Una's case when Beetle and Vice Admiral Pasek come in and add charges including 20 years in a Federation penal colony and 2 counts of sedition, and roll the intro. We will be taking a commercial break now. Have you heard Paramount is cancelling Star Trek Prodigy? The beloved show starring Kate Mulgrew as more than one Janeway. Now Prodigy went where no new Trek show went before, so help the show by signing the petition to save Star Trek Prodigy as well. Use the hashtag Save Star Trek Prodigy, and if you haven't already, please watch Prodigy while you still can. It is a great show, and I will be doing a series of ads on my Star Trek Strange New Worlds breakdowns because Paramount needs to hear us Star Trek fans have been able to get a show greenlit before we did for the original series. Let's do it for Prodigy. Okay, back to the episode. We then see Una and Neera talking, and Una is upset that they would be so outrageous as to give her a 20-year sentence, and Neera reminds her that she decided to fight them to get her freedom, and this constant throughout the episode. Una wants to be free, but she doesn't want to attack Starfleet and her friends. It's very much morally good, but if Una's going to get out, she may have to fight Starfleet and fight the system to get her freedom. But then Neera comes on board the Enterprise and she is taken to Una's quarters where she sets up shop and tells La'an that she needs the Starfleet Rule and Regulations book, and La'an asks her if it's possible that the way Starfleet obtained that Una is Illyrian through illegal means, and Neera says if Starfleet did, they could use the Wick Rule, then Starfleet would drop her case, and this becomes a sort of B story. Now here is where the episode struggles. It has a solid A story, but the B story isn't constant, and there's only 3 scenes concerning this B story. We don't have any back and forth between both stories, and the B story is very minor like in other Star Trek courtroom episodes where the B story connects with the overarching plot, while in this episode the B story just seems to be there to be there. It doesn't connect with overarching story in any way, while they could have just didn't seem to have any purpose there. So honestly, they should have cut the scenes because it just doesn't make sense for it to be there. Now, not by any means does it make the episode bad, like the scenes are very good, they just fit into the puzzle of the episode, and which just can make a viewer very confused when watching the episode. But moving on, let's come to the mess hall bar scene. Mess hall of the Enterprise. When Beetle comes over and asks if she can sit, Pike says yes, and she deduces that Pike is upset that she made sure that he isn't on the stand, and Beetle then starts to question Pike, asking when did he first meet Una, and Pike tells her that they first met when Pike was giving a lecture about a test flight that he had just flown, and afterwards Una came up and said that she believed that he had made a mistake, which Pike pointed out was a good trait in a first officer, something April taught him. And then Beetle asks him when did he first learn that Una was Illyrian, and Beetle realizes that he already knew before she was arrested, and so if he's on the stand he can be charged with conspiracy and breaching the chain of command and could put his entire crew in danger, and she tells him no heroic speeches today, and across the room Ortegas is mocking Spock and Pasek, thinking that they are just having a friendly conversation, but Mbenga notices that they hate each other, and then Spock just comes on over and says, "I'm sorry you had to witness that outburst," and Spock reveals that Pasek is one of his father's old friends, and after Spock leaves, Ortegas and Mbenga erupt into laughter. Lan comes onto the bridge and asks Yura to pull up all communications regarding Una and including personal logs, and Yura says no because they could both get in trouble, and this is really good because Yura barely gets anything to do in this episode aside from being a background character, but this is a highlight moment for Yura because she's telling Lan, "No, I can't do that, that's wrong, we got to go by the book on this," and that is exactly what she should do because you want to get Una out of her confinement by using the law, and that's something that is in this episode. Go through the law and you can get someone free who under imprisonment for something they didn't do. We then have the trial starting, and I must say that the uniforms look very good and do look like what they wore in TOS, and as the trial begins the judge asks, "How does Commander Chin Riley plead?" and Una says not guilty. Captain Beetle then says that genetic engineering is unethical and is playing God, which you have to see this from Beetle's standpoint. She has learned about the eugenics wars and uses it as a way to say why Una shouldn't be in Starfleet, but she also wants Una to be free. Nira then claims that just because a law is put in place doesn't make it right, using the history of people who were oppressed for being who they are, which as someone who is autistic I understand this, as people with autism were imprisoned centuries ago, but also in schools autistic children are bullied because we aren't as smart as other people, but it's who we are, just like being Illyrian is who Una is. Nira then argues that if people could create such laws as to oppress people, then perhaps they should even question the laws themselves which do oppress people, but then they call Admiral April to the stand. Captain Beetle then asks if didn't he sponsor Commander Chin Riley's application to Starfleet Academy, to which he answers yes. She then asks him, did Commander Chin Riley ever tell him that she's Illyrian? He then answers no, but then she asks him if he had known that she was Illyrian would he have sponsored her application to Starfleet. He says no, he wouldn't have, and then Nira comes up and starts asking questions, and she is so great at her job and the actress absolutely nails it and she deserves an Emmy for sure. She asks him why would he not have sponsored Una to the academy had he known she was Illyrian, and he responded by saying because it's against the law. But then Nira asks him what is General Order Number 1, also known as the Prime Directive. He tells her the definition that I think we all know, and she provides exact details when he revealed the Enterprise 3 separate times to pre-warp civilizations, and even states that it seems that the law only applies when a captain deems it so. Then our judge council tell Nira to stop questioning April and she defends herself from them, but when Admiral April stands up and says that Starfleet captains make hard decisions every day, and so Nira says to April, so you hold racial prejudice and all Illyrians, and then Commander Chip tell Nira to cease this line of questioning, and then says that Admiral April's protest will be strikes from the record. We then get a short 30-second scene between April and Pike. April says that he wanted to tell the court how good of an officer Una was and how he promoted her faster than anyone else on his ship, but thanks to Nira he couldn't. And then he walks away, not even taking the drink Pike had made him. Then we see Una and Nira talk. Una is furious that Nira decided to attack Admiral April, but Nira just wants to use Una's trial as a way to spread the message of Illyrians and how bad the Federation treats them and not helping Una get out of there, and they both want to help their people but they want to do it in different ways. Come back to the courtroom. Various crew members tell the court how good of an officer Una is, and this is showing how good Una is and is vital to the Enterprise, but then we come across Spock and Beetle asks him as Una had lied on her application, isn't it logical that she be punished accordingly? And Spock has a logical answer to this. He says that it illogical to punish Una because the loss to Starfleet would be devastating as she one of the best Starfleet officers. And then Beetle asks La'an if she has any relation to Khan Noonan Singh, and she says yes, and this is a curious answer since augments aren't allowed in Starfleet, but apparently their offspring are. It's just very weird. But moving on, Beetle just asks Spock if he felt that Commander Chin Riley was hiding something. He says yes, and when asked what she was hiding, the audience was like, Spock, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, and he says a love for musicals. But the Nira then asks if Commander Chin Riley hadn't been in Starfleet, then would all the people she wouldn't have been able to, and La'an responds with, I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for Una, and she isn't wrong. And then after this see a few photos in Una's quarters, and La'an gives her the rules and regulations book, and Nira asks if La'an has had any luck with finding out if Starfleet had obtained information about Una through illegal means, to which La'an says that she wasn't able to, and Nira helps La'an and if there's something else she should know. And then we learn that La'an blames herself for Una's arrest and says that she believes after Una told her that she was Illyrian that she made a personal log and that someone sent that to Starfleet, but Nira assures her that it wasn't her, and even tells her that it's possible that she carries her family's enhancements, and she even admits that it's possible. And then La'an says that she's a monster, but Nira tells her that she's not. We then come back to the courtroom, and Nira asks that Una to come to the stand, and Nira asks Una to tell the court what her childhood was like. Beetle objects, but Nira says that she's just trying to add context and she's allowed to continue. Una says that she grew up on a world that had been granted provisional membership in the Federation just the year before she was born, and all Illyrians were able to genetically enhance their children. Una then said that for children like her that they were prosecuted, and it all started one night when her best friend's cousin had hurt himself and his immune system started to glow. Then all Illyrians were attacked and villainized. She says that she feared for her life, and then one night she hurt herself, and she then said that had her parents not been able to get her to an Illyrian doctor she would have died. Then the government separated them into two cities, Illyrian and non-Illyrian, but her family went to the non-Illyrian and left their friends and family behind. And then Nira asks how did Starfleet find out that she's Illyrian, and she said that she turned herself in because she wanted to be seen. Then Nira went and sat down, but then Vice Admiral Pasek came over and asked Una, when did Captain Pike find out that she was Illyrian, and she finally responded and spoke the truth that Captain Pike learned that she was Illyrian 4 months before she was arrested, and so he put the entire crew of the Enterprise at risk and now might have a court-martial. But then Nira has Beetle read the requirements for an asylum. 1. If a person has been prosecuted, as Una was prosecuted. 2. If someone fears for their life, as Una feared for her life. 3. Bring this to the authorities. When Una talked to Captain Pike and then turned herself into Starfleet. Nira then brings the book up to the judges and tells them this is why she loves law, because she can help someone with the law, and tells them that they can help Una and they rule in Una's favor, and she is granted an asylum and allowed to go back onto the Enterprise. She beams aboard with everyone welcoming her aboard, and then Nira and the crew part ways as Nira says that she's not the biggest fan of Starfleet and the Federation, but she's glad that there's a crew with who are proud to serve. under an Illyrian commander, and she beams out and Una tells everyone to get back to their stations and Pike and Una hug and the episode ends well. I'll see you next week and remember to like, share and subscribe to grow this community and to sign the